Chloe Rigby, editor of InternetRetailing.net, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, The Top 5 Trends Driving Commerce in 2018, in association with Channel Advisor. Over the next hour, we'll be hearing from Håkan Tier, Director of Strategic Partnerships EMEA at Channel Advisor, as he explores the 5 trends he believes retailers will need to understand in 2018. As Director of Global Strategic Partnerships Channel Advisor, Håkan is responsible for maintaining Channel Advisor's strong strategic partner relationships and leading initiatives to establish new channels and opportunity for Channel Advisor sellers. He's been involved with e-commerce since launching his first online store in 1999, and Håkan holds an MSc from Chalmers University. At the end, we'll be moving into a Q&A session, so ahead of that, let me explain how to ask any questions that you may have. On the control panel on your screen, you'll see a chat box. Write your question in that box and press send. We'll aim to get to as many questions as we can today. So this session is recorded, so I'd remind you that after the webinar finishes, we'll be sending out an email with a link, so you can watch it again whenever it's convenient for you. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Håkan Tier, Director of Strategic Partnerships EMEA at Channel Advisor. Håkan, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much, Chloe, and thank you to everyone for taking time out in this busy season. So what I'm going to do before we get started is I would like to take 2 minutes to introduce Channel Advisor so you understand who we are and where we fit into the e-commerce ecosystem. So, Channel Advisor, we help brands and retailers to grow their e-commerce business by connecting them to consumers through hundreds of digital channels globally. This can include things like digital marketing channels, like search engines, comparison shopping. We also provide integrations to marketplaces, about 100 of them across the globe. And we also help brands to support their retail channel through our Where to Buy solution. And we work with close to 3,000 customers. And over the last 12 months, we have managed over $8 billion worth of transactions in our platform. So we do this at a pretty significant scale. We're a team of about 700 people globally, and we are present across the globe. So we're headquartered on the US East Coast in North Carolina. We have offices in Boston and Seattle. Here in Europe, we're headquartered in London, so we're based in Covent Garden. And we also have offices in Berlin, Limerick in Ireland, and Madrid in Spain. We have 2 offices in China, we're in Melbourne, and we have an office in Sao Paulo as well. All right, so first of all, here's broadly what we're going to cover today. So most of these trends are not really new concepts, but these 5 things are things that we think are going to be crucial to focus on this year. So even if you've heard about all this before, 2018 is going to be the year to take action. And before we get started on those 5, I just wanted to talk about the age of algorithms, which sounds like the next Marvel movie, but basically I want to talk about some technologies that are enabling a lot of the innovation that we're seeing now. So we're at a tipping point in terms of technology availability, not just within e-commerce, but in society as a whole. And there are a set of technologies that are becoming mature and affordable enough that they will start to have increasing impact on technology. And I'd like to highlight 3 of those that are underpinning a lot of the change that we're seeing. So the first technology we're seeing is big data. So for better or worse, there's a vast amount of information available about us, and it's growing at an exceptional rate. Every time you visit a web page, you leave a trace and some sort of clues in terms of your preferences and your behavior. And thanks to capabilities of like social networks like Facebook, more and more of this information is available. And data obviously is only powerful when you can analyze it and process it and turn it into some sort of insight and action. And this is where artificial intelligence starts to come in. AIs can process vast volumes of data and not only find trends, but also learn and adapt based on that data. And AI technology is mature enough and affordable enough that it's starting to be applied broadly, and you should expect to see more and more of that. And it's going to become more and more kind of middle of the road in 2018. We're not quite at the point where you're going to have sentient robots running your warehouse, but we're not too far off that either. And then finally, natural language processing is also reaching maturity, and what that's going to enable us to do, and we're going to see several examples of, is to have a whole new way of interacting with technology using either voice or text in a more natural way, where you can use natural language and the software can process it, understand not just meaning, but also sentiment. And obviously leveraging the combination of AI and big data, come back with intelligent answers. All right, so let's start talking about omnichannel, which obviously has been a buzzword for a couple of years. So omnichannel retail is really the ability to offer a consistent, connected experience to your consumers, regardless of which channel they happen to be in at the time of engaging. And in 2016 and 17, Omnichannel was definitely one of the top focus points in the industry, and a lot of the bigger retailers have gone very far down the line of implementing that. And I think what we're going to see in 2018 increasingly is the widening of the gap between the retailers that got on board early and the ones that are still lagging in terms of providing an omnichannel experience. We're going to look at a few stats that were provided by Forrester. And so what they have done is they conducted a survey looking at leading retailers in the UK and the US. And they have ranked them based on 4 criteria. So it's online experience, in-store experience, in-store pickup, and channel consistency. And as we're going to see, unfortunately, if you're a UK retailer, the US retailers are pulling ahead in terms of omnichannel. So here is kind of the scorecard for the US retailers. So what we see here is they tend to score particularly high on channel consistency and online experience. So the ability to offer similar experience both inline and offline. And if we look at the overall average for the top 8 that were surveyed, it's 72 out of 100. And if we compare that to the UK retailers, we find that the overall score is 62, so significantly lower. UK retailers, interestingly, tend to score higher on the in-store experience, but lower in all the other categories. So obviously for UK retailers, this means an opportunity to learn from the US and hopefully close the gap. So some of the key findings from this, obviously it's nice to see that B&Q, at least one UK retailer has got it right and is actually top of the list. We do see UK retailers broadly still trailing. The US are better at providing in-store inventory than we are in the UK. And I think one of the things we're going to see in 2018 is that one of the kind of next steps of omnichannel is providing in-store access to your basket as well. So you can walk into the store and get access to the items that you put in your basket online. So one of the things, we can jump onto the next one. So obviously one of the things to take away from this is that it used to be that you could be ahead of the game by having a good omnichannel experience. And at this point, if you can't do that, you're probably falling behind. So as a brick and mortar retailer, this is something that really is going to be crucial in 2018. And obviously, providing experiences like in-store pickup, the ability to deliver to multiple addresses, to pick a delivery slot is going to be very important for things like this. And the idea of inventory is going to be basically you have one in inventory or access to that, and you need to be able to provide cross-channel inventory. And having that not only helps you with the kind of omnichannel experience, but there are a few kind of fringe benefits as well. So, for example, if you want to participate in Google's local inventory ads, you need to be able to provide local inventory, obviously. So that allows consumers to Google for a product and find that you have it in store quarter mile away from where they are. Another thing that it will enable is we see a lot of brands starting to adapt where to buy solutions. And so what they want to do in a similar way is they want to direct visitors to their brand site to retailers offline near where the user is. And if you can provide the brand with that inventory, they can send them to your store. So mobile commerce, obviously mobile has been a hot topic for the past 10 years. And so this slide basically contains a whole bunch of stats that kind of enforce what you already know, which is that mobile as a channel is the dominant channel in terms of driving traffic. Mobile commerce is growing faster than e-commerce as a whole. Obviously, these stats are US, and I think in Europe, we're slightly ahead. And if you look at Asia, it's far more advanced than we are. We will soon pass, so mobile will soon pass desktop in terms of number of transactions on here in Europe. And so what we saw on our platform, which obviously is a kind of subsection, but Thanksgiving last year was the first day where we reached the tipping point, if you will, where more than half of transactions were on a mobile device rather than on a tablet or on a desktop computer. And we've seen this consistently on our platform throughout Cyber 5, both last year and this year. So who is doing it well? So this another Forrester survey. So they looked at leading retailers in Europe in terms of what they provide for a mobile experience and ranked them on usability and functionality. And in this case, Argos is head and shoulders above any of the other ones. And they were the first ones apparently to break the 1 billion sales mark in pure m-commerce sales. So the things to take away regarding mobile is that if you're not optimizing for mobile, you're missing pretty much half of the traffic to your site. It is an absolute requirement to have a mobile optimized experience. Do keep in mind that revenue is still going to be higher on desktop. A lot of consumers still prefer to make large ticket item purchases on their desktop rather than kind of the type of impulse purchase that you may be making on a mobile device. I think the biggest takeaway is to think about what makes you unique. How do you provide the best possible mobile experience based on what you have to offer? And also think about how do you participate in the battle for the screen space. So today's mobile user typically has, or well, on average has 33 apps on their phone. 9 of those they use on a daily basis. And if you think about how many of those 9 are going to be shopping apps, it's probably going to be 1 or 2. So when a user has the option of using some of the broad apps like eBay, Amazon, Argos, what can you provide to make your experience compelling enough that you can become one of those 9 that are used daily? The next one is probably one of the newer trends. It's been around for a couple of years, but it's the concept of conversational commerce. And there are really two legs to what we're talking about. So both, the first one here is the idea of chatbots. A chatbot is the ability to use some sort of messenger system, like be that Facebook Messenger, WeChat, WhatsApp, and have a brand or retailer chat with the consumers. And so these messaging systems have actually already overtaken email in terms of number of messages sent. So it is the dominant medium in terms of communication today. And we are getting close to 3 billion users of messenger apps globally, and probably hitting that next year to 2018. And here's where the enabling technologies play in. So you have the combination of artificial intelligence, so machine learning, and natural language processing that makes this, first of all, possible, but also increasingly available and affordable. It's surprisingly cheap to build a chatbot today for these messenger systems. So the other leg of conversational commerce obviously is voice commerce. So the ability to leverage devices like, in this case, Alexa, which is Amazon's device, and here are a bunch of stats in terms of how quickly Alexa has taken off. Obviously, it's fairly early days. They've sold a lot of devices. A lot of the users have started trying out using it for actually making purchases. Obviously, to get the most out of Alexa, you need to be an Amazon Prime user, and that's a quickly growing number as well. What I would expect in 2018 is for this growth to continue and probably at a higher rate. So Alexa is not the only game in town. They've been out early and sold a lot, but there's Google Home is available as well. We're looking forward to Apple's HomePod. There's Alibaba's Genie as well. And as users, I guess, get more used to using voice search will be more and more common. And I'd say one of the things you need to think about is how are you optimizing for natural language? So is your search optimized for someone speaking rather than typing keywords? And in terms of the challenges this may lead to is, first of all, we're going to be limited to a small set of devices that arguably will create walled gardens. So think about, how do you fit into an Alexa ecosystem, for example? What can you offer that makes it unique, and how do you enable users to easily access that service? Personalization has also been around for quite some time, but it's becoming more and more crucial. We've gotten to a point where personalization is something that is not a nice to have, it's what consumers expect from you. They expect you to have a message that applies to them individually. And some of the opportunities that it offers, obviously, you get much higher response rates on messages that are personally relevant. It offers an opportunity to upsell and cross-sell. So if you understand someone's personal needs and desires, it's much easier to offer them other products. And overall, you're going to increase your conversion rates with personalization. So some of the things to think about when implementing personalization is, first of all, don't be creepy. So I'm sure all of us as a consumer have seen personalized messages that cross the line of kind of violating our trust. We are willing to give up personal information in return for relevant, timely content, but that relies on that content being relevant and timely. If we as marketers start to violate that, we're quickly going to alienate our consumers. The way to monitor this, obviously, is to look at how consumers react to these personalized messages. At the top of the funnel, you should be measuring things like, how are they opening your messages? Are they clicking through? Are they sharing it if it's via social media? And if you look at the bottom of the funnel, if you will, the final outcome, are they converting or are they unsubscribing? Because if they're unsubscribing, you've crossed the line clearly. And some other things to think about is when you make recommendations, try to recommend the unexpected, so relevant, but maybe not necessarily what I thought of. From personal experience, one example, if I search for an Arsenal t-shirt, don't recommend a Tottenham t-shirt. I've seen that myself, and that's probably not a very relevant recommendation. What you should be doing in scenarios like that is to maybe recommend some other Arsenal merchandise or memorabilia or something that I hadn't thought of. That's not the same, but related. And in the case of Arsenal, maybe you should recommend something to get over the inevitable disappointment at the end of the season, but it's a different story. Don't sell past the close. So what that means is, once I have made a purchase, first of all, don't retarget me for the same product. So I see this time and time again. I will keep seeing ads for something that I already bought from the same retailer. And also, especially if I made a fairly high ticket item purchase, you can stop recommending similar items. So if I go out and buy, let's say I buy a TV, odds are I'm not going to buy another TV next day when I return to your site. So make sure you stop promoting things that I'm not going to buy. Finally, timing, very important and can be very impactful. So for example, understand when your consumers are in the consideration phase. And again, this will be individual and personalized. So if someone returns to your site every Friday afternoon, that's probably when they are in a consideration frame of mind. So that's a good time to target them with a message. And you can do that the following week, or you can do it a couple of hours after they return, but understand their behavior that way. Another example, every August every year, I get an email reminder from a florist telling me that it's time to order flowers for my mother-in-law. It's a very useful, very timely, very personalized message, and it keeps me out of trouble. So that kind of timing is very good. Think about what are kind of recurring events that you can leverage in your personalization. So to wrap that part up, customers want and they expect a personalized experience. There are a lot of sites out there doing it well, and they kind of set the bar for what a personalized experience should look like. Personalization is pretty widely available as a technology, so probably your e-commerce platform or your content management system will either have built-in personalization features, or they will work with partners that can offer it, that have an integration. And again, tying back to the technology slide at the beginning, expect to see an evolution in the capability of what personalization engines can do. And it can start out with something simple like customers who like this also liked that. But most importantly, you should be trying it out and learning. And learning there is the kind of operative word. So make sure you monitor how people react to your personalization so you're not crossing the line. And finally, to kind of tie it all together, customer experience, which is a recurring theme. Again, a lot of statistics about why it's crucial to provide an excellent customer experience. So I guess we can start by kind of defining what is the customer experience. So it's really an expression of the quality of the interaction you provide your customers with throughout the duration of your relationship. So in many ways, it's kind of an amalgamation of the things that we have discussed so far, along with other things like pre and post sale customer service, fulfillment, and so on. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet or magic customer experience app you can install and walk away. And even worse, since customer experience is a reflection of the entire purchase process, it's only as good as the weakest link. So even if you have a truly personalized and optimized mobile experience, if you deliver the order 3 days late, you've broken the chain and provided a bad customer experience. So it's really a holistic view of how you interact and how you service your customers. So some of the things to think about is, first of all, personality. So think about what is your brand persona, if you will. Be authentic and be consistent. So provide the same experience throughout and be yourself as a brand. An experience needs to be streamlined. People probably visit your site to transact, so make that as easy as possible. And providing content is always good, but make sure that what you're providing is relevant. It's not always a question of more is better. Reviews is one of these things that you should be providing. It affects conversion rates, and most importantly, consumers are looking for social validation of their decision or as part of their purchase process. And if you don't provide it on your site, then odds are they're going to go somewhere else to look for it. So you want to keep them on your site, so provide reviews. So to wrap that up, customer experience is paramount in that it needs to be consistent, and is really what makes your consumers come back. And think about what are the questions that your visitors will have throughout their journey, and provide answers to them, and don't spend a lot of time and effort trying to answer questions that they don't have. In terms of feedback from your customers, be open, be honest, respond, engage. Frequently having a negative review with a good response from the brand or the retailer is going to have a more positive impact because you're showing your engagement. And I would say, especially in today's competitive retail environment, where you as a retailer are up against giants like Amazon, providing a better customer experience overall can be your key differentiator. So if you do what you do and do that better and in a more compelling way than anyone else, that can be arguably your most important differentiator. All right, so to summarize what we talked about before we go into Q&A. So first of all, Omnichannel, it's here. And if you're not thinking, first of all, if you're a brick and mortar seller and you're not thinking in terms of Omnichannel, you're probably falling behind. So that's going to be something that's crucial to think about in 2018. Mobile is going to be the biggest channel in terms of traffic. So think about how you provide an optimized experience, and think about what is your role in the screen wars. What are you going to provide? If you're providing an app, why would your app be on the screen? Conversational commerce is going to become a real thing in 2018. So think about how you can implement that in your, be that customer service or in your pre-sales experience. Personalization is something that today's shopper expects. Think about what you're doing with it, and are you measuring if you're doing it correctly? And then finally, customer experience is likely to be the biggest differentiator that you can provide to make sure that your e-commerce experience is unique and optimized. And with that, again, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time out. And I know it's busy times for everyone this time of year, but I appreciate you taking the time. And I'm going to hand back to Chloe to see if we have any questions that have come up throughout the presentation.
We do indeed have questions that are coming in now. Just a quick reminder before we start in on the Q&A session, to anybody else who has a question on how to ask it, on the control panel on your screen, you'll see a chat box. You write your question there and press send, and we will aim to answer as many questions as we can today. But if we don't get to yours, we'll try and follow up offline later. So Håkan, the first question for you today is, do you think Alexa will be the dominant force in voice going forward in e-commerce, or do you think that Google Home or the Apple Pod will be real rivals in this space?
That's a good question. I think Alexa will certainly be one of the dominant forces within the, I guess, e-commerce vertical of voice. Remember that there's a lot more to kind of voice than just commerce. So I would expect to see high adoption rates among Prime users for Alexa. If you're a Prime user and you feel that you need to have a voice device in your home, it's pretty likely that you're going to choose to have an Amazon device. And especially with the rapid growth of Amazon Prime, I think Amazon is going to take a big chunk of the voice commerce market. In terms of Google and Apple, they're not retailers in the same sense that Amazon is. So they're going to need to build a network ecosystem of retailers to enable the commerce part of voice. So I would say yes, I would expect Amazon to be fairly dominant.
That's great. And what are your thoughts on AI chatbots versus real people when it comes to on-site customer service?
I guess the answer is use both. A lot of chatbots can be powered by humans, if you will. So the technology typically allows humans to direct, choose answers, or kind of pre-screen answers before they go out. And with the addition of artificial intelligence and machine learning to that, you basically train chatbots or AIs by providing a layer of human intervention or interaction early on. And I would expect that as time goes on, your chatbots will become more and more autonomous, if you will. So I would say it's a question of both. You will need humans probably earlier on, and probably less so over time.
That's great. Thanks for that. We've seen the recent rise of Singles Day in China. Do you think we'll see anything like that in the UK?
I don't know. I've seen some attempts to implement Singles Day, but that hasn't really taken off. I think our adoption of Black Friday has worked, I would say, surprisingly well. And I don't know what other kind of shopping event would be applicable, but I would expect end of the year to continue to be peak season for us for the foreseeable future.
That's great. And then Andrew asks, what do you see as the biggest consumer pain point in the e-commerce world? That's a big question. Do you have an answer?
Wow. There are quite a few of them, I think. I see the trade-off between personal data and personalization to be a tricky one for us as consumers. Like, how much are we willing to give up in terms of personal data, and before we feel kind of violated with what we get back. I would say at the end of the purchase process, fulfillment is still something that is complicated. There's still a lot of opportunity for retailers to differentiate on quality of fulfillment, because at the end of the day, you need to get a product from A to B, right? So think more about how you can provide an outstanding delivery experience. So be that, I don't know if it will be delivery services that can follow me around and find me and hand it over to me. But it's the final piece of the puzzle, which is actually getting the product to the consumer, is still something that leaves a lot of room for improvement.
That's great. Thanks, Håkan. Somebody is asking for your guidance on trends with regards to logistics and payments. So what are the main elements driving e-commerce and logistics in 2018 for logistics and payments?
Yeah, the logistics, like I just said, is going to continue to be an opportunity to differentiate. And there are all sorts of trends in terms of being able to nominate a time and place for delivery. We see a lot more of what's called hyper-local delivery, so be able to get it within a couple of hours. There are some companies starting to offer, like I said, the idea of, rather than me telling the delivery company where to deliver it, they will track me and find me. You have things like the ability to open the boot of a car remotely for a delivery company. So I think it was Volvo that had this, where the delivery company can open the boot of your car, put the package in the boot, close it, and be done. So there's a ton of innovation going on. I think there'll be more and more of it coming. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity in 2018 to differentiate on that. In terms of payment, obviously, to make that as easy and seamless as possible is, again, going to be a big differentiator. We see Facebook Messenger has added payment possibilities within the interface, which make it as easy as possible to transact through messengers. And obviously, with WeChat, that's been available for a long time. Things like pay with a contactless and fingerless, obviously, or fingerprint. There's still a lot of innovation going on. In the UK, it's slightly different from Europe. So as a UK seller going into, say, Germany and the Nordics, you need to become familiar with the idea of paying via invoice, where you send a package with an invoice and the consumer pays, which is kind of an alien concept to us here, but very, very common on the continent. So look for payment providers and partners that can help you with, especially as you're looking to expand globally, so that you can find support for local preferred payment methods.
That's great, thank you. A question about Alexa and Google. How might product recommendations work with devices such as Alexa and Google if there's no previous data click stream or voice stream?
So here's where it becomes interesting, because if you are a Prime member, then that does exist because they know who you are. So obviously your behavior as a Prime consumer will be available for Amazon. So again, it's a question of tying all that data together, which is, if you're using Amazon, going to be on their side. Obviously going to be trickier if you have built an app into Alexa. I don't know what type of personal data is available through their interfaces if you start Alexa enabling your apps. But I think in the case of Alexa, it's just another channel or just another interface to your Prime, if you will.
That's great. By the way, I think your screen's going to screensaver.
Oh, look.
Just the next question is, how much impact do you think the returns process has on customer satisfaction?
I think that's, again, ties into logistics and is one of these things where retailers have the opportunity to differentiate. I saw some statistics from our partner Tomando on expectation from consumers versus what retailers provide today. And something like 75% of consumers expect the retailer to pick up the tab for a return, where only 35% actually provided that. So I think it's a very important part of the whole process. Even if return rates are low, just having the safety net of free returns or even like free pickups is going to help conversion rates. And some of the things we've seen out of the US with Google Wardrobe, I think, is going to kind of change the concept of how we shop and how we return. So with Google Wardrobe or Amazon Wardrobe, you can order a set of whatever, shoes, clothing, whatever. You try it on for 7 days, and you then keep what you want to keep, and you put the rest back in the box, and you can just leave the box on your doorstep, and Amazon will pick it up at no charge. And so the idea of having unattended return pickups obviously is one evolution of how the returns process works. And obviously the best solution to returns is to provide enough information up front that the seller doesn't want to return because they bought the right product. But I think it's the comfort factor of knowing that it's going to be seamless. It's going to be a very big differentiator.
That's great. Next question is from John, who says, should retailers have products that are exclusive online and aren't available in stores?
I would say yes. So it's a tricky one. Again, it depends on your store footprint, obviously. What we're seeing a lot increasingly, and certainly down on the continent, is retailers adding marketplaces to extend the selection online. So without adding extra inventory to your physical warehouse space, by adding a marketplace, you can get additional sellers on, so you offer more selection online. And I think that's certainly one option to make that possible, but also having the kind of omnichannel approach where your consumer can see what's available in the store and what's not, so they can make the choice between going to store or buying online. I don't think it depends on what kind of retailer you are, what your selection is, but I don't think you would expect to walk into, a store for someone who carries 500,000 items on their site to walk into their small corner store and find all of them there. So I think it ties back into omnichannel, and just make sure that you're transparent with the consumer what's available where.
Thank you. That's great. Next question is, you've mentioned 5 big trends that people should be thinking about and the technologies behind them. If you were to choose one, maybe discounting mobile, which do you think would increase conversions the most? Which is the one that people should really be thinking about?
I guess that depends on conversions in what channel. I think personalization has tangible impact on conversion rates if done right. So if you can get personalization right, that's going to have a very easy to measure return on investment. On on the other hand, if you are a brick and mortar retailer and not a pure play, having an correctly implemented omnichannel strategy is probably going to be the most important thing for you.
That makes sense. That's great. Somebody says, as a channel, how relevant do you believe affiliate marketing is?
Wow. Yeah, that's another broad question. Now, I think that will continue to play a role. I don't see that as one of the most rapidly growing sources of traffic for anyone, but it will certainly continue to play a role. And we see there are some of the more curated sites, particularly in the fashion industry, that operate on that model. So if you are a fashion retailer and you want to work with the likes of Lyst, for example, they rely partially on an affiliate model. So that's going to continue to be a place for affiliate programs, and it will continue to be kind of part of the mix of what you need to do to drive traffic to your site.
That's great. Next question is for a little more detail or elaboration on taking an omni-channel approach. Is there anything more you can say about omni-channel approaches to e-commerce?
I would say, I mean, think about your experience as a consumer. So when I think about, let's say, Home Depot, or let's use B&Q because they're a good example. In my mind, I don't separate B&Q online from walking into the store. I expect it's just B&Q. It's just a brand. Like, I interact with B&Q through various channels. So how can you provide that experience to your consumers when they walk into your brick and mortar store? Do they have access to the same information? Do they have access? Do you provide the same pricing in store as you do online? It's more about how can you provide consistency regardless of where the consumer is interacting with you. And I think making sure that you have connected systems in the back end is going to be crucial to that. I've talked to a lot of retailers who their main struggle is that they can't connect their in-store inventory to their online inventory. So they simply don't know how much is available in store. So that is like one of the big hurdles that you're probably going to need to overcome, is how do you get to your offline inventory and make that available as part of an omni-channel strategy.
That's great. Then Thomas asks, are there any new sources of traffic that retailers should be aware of? Do you think there's anything new coming up?
I think as a retailer, you always need to, I guess, be aware of what the trends are in terms of new social networks, and things don't happen that quickly. So it's not like things don't pop up kind of overnight. So, but we certainly see some of the channels that have changed a lot and started to have more impact over the last couple of years. So, for example, Instagram has matured in terms of what's available for advertising. You have a lot more opportunity now to put, I guess, richer ads onto Instagram to drive more traffic. So I don't foresee anything popping up overnight, but I would say is you need to stay on top of what the trends are, especially on the social media side of things, and make sure that you understand what your opportunities are to drive traffic from those channels. And typically that will involve some form of digital marketing investment.
That's great. We're coming up towards the end of our questions now, but there's a couple more. Do you have any opinion on the adoption of retail finance or consumer finance in the e-commerce retail markets?
That's a bit out of my comfort zone. So
Okay.
I think I'm going to pass on that one. I'm sure I have opinions, but that doesn't mean that they're informed.
Okay, that's great. I think that covers everything. What would you say the biggest challenges of multi-channel retailing are?
Yeah, no, like I said, usually the stumbling block is usually getting offline inventory data correct and available so that you can do things like Google local inventory ads or provide a true omnichannel experience. So it's getting that inventory available. That's usually one of the biggest challenges in an omnichannel environment.
That's great. And I think with that brings our Q&A session to an end. If there are any that we've missed, we will come back to you. Somebody has asked for a link to the report from Tamando, and we will follow up with that. So I'd like really then to to end the webinar by thanking you all for taking part, listening and asking your questions. In particular, Håkan, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And we will, as always, follow up by email with a link to the on-demand webinar, which you can listen again to at your convenience. So thank you all once again for taking part in this webcast. Thank you and goodbye.